Hello and welcome back to Quiz Factor Deep Dive. Today we're exploring the basics of virtualization, the core technology that actually made cloud computing possible in the first place. Let's get into it. So what is virtualization? At its core, virtualization is the process of creating a virtual, software-based version of something that would traditionally exist as physical hardware. This includes virtual servers, virtual storage, and virtual networks. Instead of one physical server running one operating system for one purpose, virtualization lets you run multiple virtual machines on a single physical server, each behaving like its own independent computer. This is made possible by something called a hypervisor. A hypervisor is software that sits between the physical hardware and the virtual machines, allocating resources like CPU, memory, and storage to each virtual machine as needed. The hypervisor essentially tricks each virtual machine into thinking it has its own dedicated hardware, when in reality it's sharing physical resources with several other virtual machines on the same host. Why does this matter so much? Before virtualization, if a business wanted to run multiple applications, they typically needed a separate physical server for each one. This led to massive underutilization. Most servers ran at a tiny fraction of their actual processing capacity, while the rest of that expensive hardware just sat idle, doing nothing. Virtualization solved this problem by allowing multiple workloads to run on the same physical hardware simultaneously. Instead of one underused server per application, you could now run several virtual machines on one well-utilized physical server. This dramatically improved hardware efficiency and reduced wasted capacity. There are real cost benefits here too. Fewer physical servers means lower hardware costs, lower real estate costs for housing that hardware, lower power consumption, and lower cooling requirements. Virtualization essentially let businesses do more with less. Virtualization also introduced flexibility that simply didn't exist before. Virtual machines can be created, copied, moved, or deleted in minutes, all through software with no physical hardware changes required. Need a new server for testing? Spin up a virtual machine. Done with it? Delete it. No procurement delays, no hardware installation, no waiting weeks for new equipment to arrive. This flexibility is precisely what cloud providers like AWS built upon to create the cloud computing model we use today. When you launch an EC2 instance on AWS, you're essentially provisioning a virtual machine running on top of AWS's underlying physical infrastructure. AWS manages the physical hardware and the hypervisor layer, while you simply consume virtual compute resources on demand. This is also the foundation of multi-tenancy, a model where multiple different customers can securely share the same physical infrastructure without ever being aware of each other or having any access to each other's data. The hypervisor enforces strict isolation between virtual machines, so even though your virtual server might be running on the same physical hardware as another company's virtual server, there's no way for either of you to interfere with or access the other's resources. There are different types of virtualization worth knowing. Server virtualization is the most common, running multiple virtual servers on one physical machine. Storage virtualization pools physical storage devices together and presents them as a single virtual storage resource, making storage easier to manage and allocate. Network virtualization creates virtual versions of network resources like switches and routers, allowing networks to be configured and reconfigured through software rather than physically rewiring equipment. Together, these forms of virtualization abstract away the underlying physical hardware completely. Businesses no longer need to think about specific physical servers, specific storage devices, or specific network switches. Instead, they consume compute, storage, and networking as flexible, software-defined resources that can scale up or down almost instantly. This is exactly why virtualization is considered foundational to cloud computing. Without it, none of the 6 advantages we covered in the previous video would actually be possible. You couldn't trade capital expense for variable expense if every customer needed dedicated physical hardware. You couldn't stop guessing capacity if scaling required physically installing new servers. And you certainly couldn't go global in minutes if every new region required manually built physical infrastructure from scratch. Virtualization is the technology layer that makes all of this elasticity, speed, and efficiency possible. It's the invisible engine running underneath every cloud service you use. So there you have it. Virtualization creates software-based versions of servers, storage, and networks using a hypervisor to share physical hardware efficiently and securely across multiple virtual machines. It's the foundational technology that made modern cloud computing possible. If this helped, hit subscribe for more AWS Cloud Practitioner content, and I'll see you in the next one.
Now let me tell you something important. Most professional certification exams aren't just testing your knowledge. They're testing your speed, accuracy, and ability to perform under pressure. That's why practicing with real exam-style questions matters. Download QuizFactor A+. Get access to thousands of practice questions, timed quizzes, and realistic exam simulations designed to help you prepare smarter and walk into exam day with confidence. Find the link in the description.